I want to return to the incident that you referenced a minute ago that occurred in Monterey, California in October 2017. At that time, you were still married to your second wife, correct?
I believe so.
And you had just fathered a child by a woman who would later become your third wife, correct?
Senator, I was falsely charged, fully investigated, and completely cleared.
So you think you were completely cleared because you committed no crime. That's your definition of cleared? You had just fathered a child 2 months before by a woman that was not your wife. I am shocked that you would stand here and say you're completely cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you are completely cleared? Senator, how is that a complete clear?
Senator, her child's name is Gwendolyn Hope Hegseth, and she's a child of God, and she's 7 years old.
And she was, and you cheated on the mother of that child less than 2 months after that daughter was born, didn't you?
Those were false charges. Well, no, fully investigated, and I was completely cleared. And I am so grateful for the marriage I have to this amazing woman behind me.
You've admitted that you had sex at that hotel in October 2017. You said it was consensual. Isn't that correct?
Anything?
You've admitted that it was consensual, and you were still married, and you just had a child by another woman.
Again,
how do you explain your judgment?
Completely false charges against me. You fully investigated, and I was completely cleared.
You have admitted that you had sex while you were married to wife 2 after you just had fathered a child by wife 3. You've admitted that. Now, if it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
It was a false claim then and a false claim now.
If it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
That was a false claim.
So you
talking about a hypothetical.
So you can't tell me whether someone who has committed a sexual assault is disqualified from being Secretary of Defense?
Senator, I know in my instance, and I'm talking about my instance only, it was a false claim.
But you acknowledge, that you cheated on your wife and that you cheated on the woman by whom you had just fathered a child. You have admitted that.
I will allow your words to speak for themselves.
You're not retracting that today. That's good. I assume that in each of your weddings, you've pledged to be faithful to your wife. You've taken an oath to do that, haven't you?
Senator, as I've acknowledged to everyone in this committee, not a perfect person, not claiming to be.
But no, I just asked a simple question. You've taken an oath like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
What is the highest level of international security agreement that you have led? And can you name some that the Secretary of Defense would lead? There's 3 main ones. Do you know?
I have not been involved in international security arrangements because I have not been in government other than serving in the military. So my job has been to lead men and women in combat.
The answer is no. Can you name one of the 3 main ones that the Secretary of Defense
talking about defense
signs?
Arrangements. I mean, NATO might be one that you're referring to.
Status of Forces Agreement would be one of them.
Status of Forces Agreement. I've been a part of teaching about Status of Forces Agreements.
But you don't remember to mention it? You're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact amount of nations in that, but I know we have allies in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, and trying to work on submarines with them.
Mr. Hegseth, none of those countries are in ASEAN.
Across.
None of those 3 countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations.
Were you surprised he wasn't able to answer your question?
I'm flabbergasted that he was not able to answer a very simple question as that, especially since he actually mentioned the importance of the Indo-Pacific in his opening statement. But, you know, he also couldn't tell me what are some of the ways that a Secretary of Defense would lead international negotiations with our allies either. So, I mean, some very basic things that anybody who wants to be Secretary of Defense should be able to answer. And for him to not even know a single nation out of the 10 in ASEAN speaks very loudly to his lack of qualifications for the job.
For 12 years, you were quite open about your views, and your views were consistently the same. Women are inferior soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and guardians. And in case anyone missed the point, and these are your words from 10 weeks ago, women absolutely straight up should not be permitted to serve in combat. And I notice on each of these quotes, those are said without qualification. It's not by how much you can lift or how fast you can run. They don't belong in combat, period, or your words, straight up. And then on November 9th, 2024, just 32 days after your last public comment saying that women absolutely should not be in combat, you declared that, quote, some of our greatest warriors are women, and you support having them serve in combat. Now, that is a very, very big about face in a very, very short period of time. So help me understand, Mr. Hegseth, what extraordinary event happened in that 32-day period that made you change the core values you had expressed for the preceding 12 years?
Senator, again, I very much appreciate you bringing up my comments from 2013 because for me, this issue has always been about standards. And unfortunately, because of some of the people that have been in political power for the last 4 years, priorities other than standards, lethality, and meritocracy have driven decision-making.
I'm quoting you from the podcast. Women shouldn't be in combat at all. Where is the reference to standards? That they should be there if they can carry, if they can run? I don't see that at all, Mr. Hegseth. What I see is that there's a 32-day period in which you suddenly have another description about your views of women in the military. And I just want to know, what changed in the 32 days that the song you sang is not the song you come in here today to sing?
Senator, the concerns I have and the concerns that many have had, especially in ground combat units, is that in pursuit of certain percentages or quotas, standards have been changed. And that makes the combat more difficult for everybody involved.
Let me make a suggestion about what happened in that 32 days. You got a nomination from President Trump. Now, I've heard of deathbed conversions, but this is the first time I've heard of a nomination conversion.